Where have all the buyers gone? Well, today Joe and I are going to try and answer that question to the best we can.
Man, you got you choked up there a little bit.
I know. So welcome to We are the Orlando Real Estate Buzz. We come to you every Thursday to bring you the latest numbers on the Orlando real estate market and to also discuss what's going on with the market. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Doing good. It's definitely an interesting time. I'm not sunburned, I promise. I've just got different lighting today. I don't have my light stand. I don't look all pretty for you guys.
Oh, so, man, you always look good. So, anyways, big question out there in the market is where are all the buyers?
Yeah. I hear it's going down, right? Like I feel it a little bit, but I do feel kind of too like some of it is a little bit of maybe you have a lot less people that are maybe just kind of thinking they want to buy but aren't really wanting to buy. Kind of a lot of people that are window shopping, and we're not getting as much window shopping anymore.
No, we're not. I mean, I think like we discussed last week, you look at the main portals. I can tell you from my website as well, is traffic's down 30 to 40% on these portals. And, there's an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that came out talking about, where have all the buyers gone. And probably one of the biggest ones that came out this week was, of course, Fannie Mae's report.
Yeah,
that came out. And you can see, right there, the big headline was only 17% of respondents said it was a good time to buy a home.
Yeah.
17%. So that's the lowest it's been since 2011. So the sentiment is just, it's not there. People are feeling uncomfortable about making that type of a large commitment of buying a home.
Well, you think about the last couple of years, right? And it's like, okay, well, all right, COVID happens, and it's like, oh, well, maybe what am I going to do? As my, what if I lose my job? But prices are skyrocketing, right? Like, there's always been kind of like a factor that was like really, really positive when looking at a negative. Like, there's always something balancing it out and usually skewing to the positive for us, right? But right now we're kind of in this weird. We don't really know. It's kind of like, okay, values aren't going up as fast as they once were. So, that's good for a buyer, but they're not going up as fast as they once were. So what does that mean? Like, rates aren't low, like stupid low like they were just 6 months, 8 months ago. They're still great historically, but try telling anybody, it's like, hey, like historically, like rates 20 years ago were way worse. Like, who cares? Like, I care about the fact that it was a year ago.
What is it today?
On a rate that was 2% lower than I can today.
Exactly. Had the discussion with a gentleman yesterday. Rates are way too high. I'm like, they're not that high. I started when they were 12%. Trust me, they're not that high. But and then the other, we're looking at the other economic indicators, and of course, the consumer price index came out, and that's sitting, still at 8.5%. We're down from 9.1, but we're still 8.5 is still a very high rate for inflation.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing. I don't think you're seeing the income match up with the rates of inflation, and that's probably one of the hardest things for people.
Yeah, and I think that's the big, like you said, like you see inflation and everything kind of gets touched, home purchases, but then really where it's like, I think you look at the last couple of years, it's like, okay, well, home prices are going up really high, but interest rates were so low that you were borrowing at such a cheap rate that it seemed, okay, we can handle this.
We can handle this, yeah.
But now we've seen inflation really catch up in ways that people really think about. You know, when you look at gas, which luckily they're down a little bit right now, but it's so much higher. And then you look at milk and eggs and meat and school supplies and all these things. And it's like, well, those are the things that are more expensive that when we budget, you know, it's really hard for someone to go, well, I used to spend 150 on groceries weekly, but now to get the exact same thing, I'm spending 190. And then they go and multiply over the course of the month and this, and then you do that for groceries and gas and for everything that they do. And all of a sudden their discretionary income dried up.
Yeah. It's tough. It's plain and simple. It's tough when you're sitting there going through your budget and you're trying to figure ways to cut things out. And then, you know, of course, that's one reason why you've seen Netflix and these other subscription services take such a hit over the past couple months, because people are I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot. Oh, it's only $40. Well, unfortunately, my eggs and my milk and everything else now just ate up that $40 that I was enjoying, you know, my Netflix with. And you go to Publix today and a few things, then you're $40, and you're like, really? I only got 2 bags. You know, and the plastic ones.
2 bags, like, oh my goodness. But I think that's where we're seeing this impact across the board now. So like decisions, I always joke, when the easy decisions become hard decisions, then the hard decisions become impossible decisions. And I say this a lot, like, you know, when you have to go to the grocery store and you go, can I afford to get everything I want, or do I need to? And you start looking, and when you start watching that to a T, or when you're like, man, I can't, maybe I should skip McDonald's, you know, as a treat for the, you know, I want to skip, I don't want to cook tonight, so I'm going to get McDonald's. And you're like, maybe I shouldn't. You know, when you start making things and making those into big decisions, then all of a sudden buying a home becomes a decision where you're kind of just stuck in paralysis, because now it's like, man, if the easy decision is hard, what's this big decision going to be?
Yeah. And that's the conversation I'm having with a lot of clients, is they just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right now, they just feel uncomfortable. They feel interest rates are up, even though we've pulled back a little bit, you know, from the high, you know, that 6.25, we've pulled back. We're seeing, you know, you go on every morning and you get the list of all the price decreases, and you're seeing those come across every morning. And some of them have been, I mean, very large price decreases. But you're still seeing people are like, I'm not comfortable. I want to wait and see. I want to wait and see what happens with the market.
And I think that's where we really are. Like you said, we're in that kind of like wait and see. And I think overall, like, I think we've seen and I say worse of where rates are going to be. You know, I think we've seen the worst of that knee jerk, right? Like if it continues to go up, it's going to be gradual. You know, I think values, like, I think we saw this kind of market do this like major, like up, like correction in a way. And it's not really a correction. It's kind of just like, hey, a normalization we talked about last week of like, hey, you know, the new normal is really just the old normal. Right? We're getting back to what we were, but it feels like such a drastic change.
It does.
Anytime you have that happen, everybody kind of just pauses and says, wait a minute, what's going on here? Should I pause? Like, what's going on exactly? And I think that's where, you know, stuff like what we're doing right here, it's important, because the average consumer doesn't have access to somebody that's going to be like, hey, here's what we're seeing. Here's what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You got to keep them informed. That's our whole job. Because, you know, and the interesting number that I saw here in the report from Fannie Mae also was that the sellers, though, still feel it's a good time to sell. Yeah. They only dropped 1% from 68 to 67 on is it a good time to sell? Yeah. So most of the sellers are still feeling it's a good time. Yeah. So that's going to put us where we've discussed before is a gradual. I think we're going to continue to see a gradual increase in the inventory, but with the lower number of buyers,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to see that. It's going to continue to have that pressure to pull back the pricing, the increase in pricings.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. You're not going to see those jumps that you've seen in the past.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I went to a couple open houses again this weekend with a couple clients, and again we were one or two people, and that was it. You didn't have that big jump to where you had people lining up out the door to get into a house.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like, it's, the buyers that are in the marketplace, they're truly buyers in the marketplace now.
They are.
Right.
They are.
Like people are buying because their home is getting like, it's too small. Their family is growing, whether it's a new baby, whether it's bringing in their parents to live with them and stuff of that sort, relocating to the area. Those are the things that you're going to continue to see, which you'll always have. Like that's ultimately what propels real estate is people have new buyers because things change, right? Like family dynamics change and people move to the area or become adults, graduate, get jobs, and they want to buy. And right now, like the millennial generation, which is entering the 30s, is the biggest generation of buyers right now. Like makes sense. And it's a huge generation. So we're going to see, I think we will see a little bit of, and I say instability, like it's going to be a little wonky.
It's going to take a while to work itself out, like it always does.
Yeah, I in a roundabout way, like we had COVID 2 years ago, right? And and that's really what kind of initiated this whole real estate craziness, right? And we kind of have we have that 2-year-old in real estate, that toddler that's not quite stable on their feet. They're walking, they're doing good, but they're you wouldn't trust them on the stairs by themselves, right? Like that's kind of where the market is. Like in a visual, it's kind of like, hey, it's good, it's plugging along, it's keep going in the right direction, but there's going to be some wobble to it right now. There's going to be some unsteadiness, and it'll stabilize. And it's going to get there, and it's going to continue to, I think we're going to continue to see values kind of go up, but we're going to see it at much more historic norms. We're not going to see it at, 20% year over year. Like that was great. That was awesome. We all love that instant injection of equity into our homes. A lot of borrowers' net worth grew so much over the last 2 years. Now it's going to be back to normal, stable, steady as we go.
Yep. And you see that in this report where you see, what are people thinking? Will home prices go up in the next 12 months? You're still seeing 39% of the people surveyed saying yes. Yeah. And you've got 30% saying no, they think they will go down. So and you got the other 30% just kind of, I have no idea.
That's the honest 30.
And that's exactly what you're talking about is we're wobbling on our feet. We're learning. The market's shaking itself out a little bit, and we'll see which way it goes.
Yeah. The one thing that I see here that you didn't highlight, but on the job loss concerns, I saw that kind of remained consistent, unchanged. 78% don't expect any concern. Like that to me is a really good indicator, because if that number were to start declining and people uncertain about their jobs, that's where I'd be really worried about a bigger shift in a lot of areas.
That's a great point. And you look at the employment numbers that came out, we added over 500,000 new jobs. Yeah. So that kind of indicates a couple things. One is that people who may have been sitting on the sidelines, who thought, oh, maybe I can, stretch it out a couple more months. Maybe that inflation, the family's looking at going, well, you know what? Time for me to get my butt back out to work. But the jobs are out there for them when they want to go back to work. Yeah. So until we see that shake up a little bit, I think we're going to have more of a stable market than whatever, everyone's, it's going to crash. I think that's the stabilizing factor. Yes, we've got the inflation up here, but our unemployment's still sitting, low at 3.5%.
Yeah.
And that's, as long as that holds, I could see even if it drops to, 4.5, 5, that's still not bad.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to have as big an effect on the housing market as we've seen, when unemployment starts to shoot up to that 6, 7, 8% situation.
Yep. So, are we going to look at the
going through that, we're gonna look at the numbers. We're gonna look at the numbers.
All right.
So let's go back. Let's look at the numbers. Look at our highlights.
Okay.
First one is the number of sales. End of the month, and we dropped to 471 sales.
That's kind of crazy. So we declined. Usually we've been seeing a tick up at month's end.
Month's end, yeah.
But this time we saw a decline. Month end was a Monday. The 30. I don't think that really.
Nobody likes to close on a Monday. No one likes to close on a Monday.
So let's ignore that. What do you mean? Everybody loves to close on a Monday and just take the rest of the week off. No, that's not what happens? Okay, never mind.
Median price dropped a little bit, down to 412. Foreclosures and short sales still very low, even though I'm watching the number of foreclosures out there, and it is ticking up. But interesting thing I'm seeing is the ones I'm watching have continuously been delayed from the sale at the courthouse. There's 6 of them that I've been watching really close, and for the past 3 months, they've been delayed for over a month. And I'm like, I got to figure out why that's happening.
Yeah.
And then our inventory shot, consistent slide up, up again. So, we're back in that nice little stream that we're following. And I think last week when we looked at the original list to sales price, we're sitting right around that 96%, that's where we're sitting again. And you can see that right across the board, there's some negotiating room in everything these days. You don't have to feel like you've got to offer a list anymore. We're in a situation with a client that house was immaculate, absolutely immaculate, listed at 300,000, and we are actually in a multiple offer situation that we haven't seen in a while. But we also had the conversation with her that we're not going crazy. We're not going crazy because the market's stabilizing. So yes, we're going to offer a little bit higher than list, but we're not going to go crazy on that.
Exactly.
So when we graph everything out, we're seeing here where we're back down under that. They've dropped the period average to 570, but for the past 2 years we're at that 600. So we're seeing 471 for the end of the month, and if you go back to the end of April, we were at 677.
Yep.
And then the end of May, we were 657. And the end of June, we're 767. So we were about 300 less homes the end of July than June. That's a lot of homes. Yeah.
It almost like looking, and you always say like hindsight's 2020, right? Like in respects, you almost feel like, was that 700 plus sales, was that a mad dash in May because rates, like everything was going on that so many people were like, let's go.
Yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this.
And you just had a lot of people in May commit to getting it done, which caused the dash in June. And now we're starting to see, maybe not like we said, that little bit of, it is what it is. Like I'm not certain. So we're just seeing buyers that are really more committed, more stable of, okay, where we are. I'm curious to see what next week's numbers are for this week.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
know for us, we were busier closing wise this week than we were last week at our company. But is that, is there anything to that? That's the hard part, is when we look at this kind of across the board, we're trending downward, but there's no consistency in numbers as much as I would,
Yeah. I mean, you look at the jumps, they're kind of, I mean, they're not small.
Yeah, you're talking 15, 20% jumps a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah. Then we go to our charts for days on market, and you see we're holding steady at 24 right now. I still do feel like that number is going to tick up slowly but surely with us. And then we're again consistently increasing our inventory.
Yep.
It's just been a steady increase. You see where the curve is kind of starting to flatten off, where it's less, it's not quite as steep as previously. We're coming in. Well, school started for my kids today.
Yep, started. I think
it's been so quiet in the office.
Orange County, so most everybody started back today. There's a couple places that I think that are starting back later next week in the Central Florida region. But like you said, like I think we will see maybe a stabilization of, you're not going to see as many houses hit the market the next couple of weeks as people get back into school routines.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is, will it pull our buyers market down even further, our number of buyers?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because normally this time in August is when, you feel a fall off, because you're talking to the families and like, oh, we're going to wait till December at the end of the semester.
Right.
We're going to try and time it at that time. People are ending their vacations. A lot of people squeezed in their vacations, and now they're back, and they're just like, well, time to get really back to the grind, get ready for the holidays.
Yep.
So you lose, you lose 10, 15, I would say probably 10, 15% of the market that you normally would feel.
So will we see that? If we see that, will there be a bigger impact on that? Is the reaction, is there a knee-jerk reaction because there's a bigger impact? Though it's something that historically happens, will it be something that creates a little bit more of a wave?
Yeah. Then we jump into our condo market, and condo market's staying pretty steady, sitting there at that 98%.
Yeah.
Average sales price is actually $300,000, which I think that took a huge jump over last week.
Yeah,
somebody sold a really big condo, and you actually see it here when we graph it out. You went from about 280, to 300,000. So there's a couple new condos that were sold that were really nice.
Good sales.
Yeah, someone's really happy. And then, number wise, condos are actually kind of sitting pretty consistent, in that 170 range.
Yeah, it's kind of really sitting there, and it's definitely off the period level, but it's not that bad at all.
No, not bad at all whatsoever. So. I mean, so when we look at the numbers, we're seeing that consistency that we've seen in the past. And again, it's just, can't reiterate enough that you're back in a normal market. And for buyers, I wouldn't necessarily be sitting on the sideline right now.
Yeah. I think like you said, there's some wiggle room for negotiating power, right? Appraisals are still, properties are still appraising. I'm not really, when we saw all the appreciation and all that craziness, that was a little bit of artificial, that excitement of that FOMO building into it. Now it's like, hey, they're getting priced a little bit better than they were before. They're getting priced at value. And you got that little bit of wiggle room where it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe instead of offering list price I'm going to offer list price and ask for some concessions, or I'm
Yeah.
going to offer, $5,000 under list price because there's some wiggle room there, and I don't want any concession. But there's some opportunity to kind of be a little more strategic. It feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got to, you can, I mean, I looked at last Saturday, 6 homes at $300,000 or less in the
Mhm.
Deltona Orange City area. I haven't had homes under $300,000 for clients in quite a while. Usually the $300,000 and
Yeah.
under were being snapped up.
Mhm.
And interesting enough, according to NAR, the most affordable city in the United States is Deltona right now.
What?
Yeah, yeah. I was reading the report. Deltona for families between $75,000 and $100,000 income.
Oh, wow.
That whole Deltona area, Deltona, DeBerry, Orange
Yeah.
City, DeLand, is
Yeah.
actually the best value in the United States right now for
Yeah.
homes.
Okay. I believe it. Are they taking into consider Deltona water and electric, by the way? Like, this could be crazy if you're on the wrong side of the street.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I always love trying to figure out which utility it is. Well, my neighbor's this, and this neighbor's this. No.
But it is there. It is still, and that's cool to see. Like, that's something that we've really been struggling with, is being able to say, hey, there's inventory. And because there's less optimistic approach on an investor level, and so many iBuyers are not being as aggressive, and they're getting out, and they're not doing all these different things. Like, the actual person trying to buy that first home, or to buy a home that's in that 250, 280, 300 range, they now have a home to look at, but B, they actually have a chance to get the home.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you read in the news that, and the reports, that the iBuyers and the investors, even the investors, the investors out from Wall Street, all say they're pulling back on their purchases.
Yep.
Open Door lost $150 million last quarter, projected to lose $130 million. Came out and said they're going to be buying less houses.
Yep.
And the ones they have, they're going to be discounting more.
Yeah.
So on those Open Door listings, the OfferPad listings, go get aggressive. What's the worst they can say is no? Okay, fine. We'll let it sit for another 6 weeks. You cover the cost. I don't have to.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that's our recap for this week. The glares kind of blinded me there, Joe. Again, thank everyone for joining us. If you're watching on Facebook, please hit the thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like, subscribe. We're going to be here every Thursday to keep you up to date on the housing market here in Orlando. And always feel free to reach out and get any questions answered. Take care, and we shall talk to you later.
Rocky, guys.